And I took an EMT class at a volunteer firehouse deep in the Catskill Mountains. So it was actually Woodstock, New York's Engine Company 5. And I realized pretty early on that I really liked the medicine.
The question to that answer and more, starting right now. Hey, this is Ian Weekly, and this is your host, Todd DeVoe, and today we're going to talk about Mobilized Rescue Systems with the Director of Training and Education, Seth Goldstein. And so their mission is to empower bystanders to save lives by equipping them with the resources necessary to respond to medical emergencies. So basically what their goal is to have just-in-time training and supplies ready to go when somebody has a medical emergency, kind of like a public access AED program. But instead of just the AEDs, they want to do the medical stuff as well, such as blood stopping and whatnot. And in today's climate with things like the Boston bombing, the Pulse nightclub, to think about those type of events, and just regular standard airplane landing in the middle of the 405 during a traffic instead of landing on the airport. If you guys remember seeing this one. So anyway, this is what we're talking. So anyway, happy 4th of July, everybody. I know this is the day or a couple days after 4th of July. I hope that your weekend was outstanding, and mine was. And let's get into it.
Hey, Seth, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into emergency management or emergency services, and a little bit about what you're doing with your product.
Sure. So my journey in emergency medical services started back in the late 90s. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental science, and I was kind of on a path to work for a company like Outward Bound or National Outdoor Leadership School, doing long backcountry trips with clients as students. And to do that, I needed to get my EMT basic. They all required it. That was the minimum level of training that they wanted to send you out there with. And I took an EMT class at a volunteer firehouse deep in the Catskill Mountains. So it was actually Woodstock, New York's Engine Company 5. And I realized pretty early on that I really liked the medicine. I really liked the science of it. So I ended up kind of changing directions, started working as an EMT for a commercial ambulance service, which I'm sure is no different in New York than it is in most other places around the country. It's honest work, but it's hard work, and it certainly doesn't pay an awful lot. And then I realized that, I thought I could do more. And so after doing that for a year or so, I went to paramedic school, became a paramedic in 2000, and continued to work as a paramedic in New York. Had an opportunity to move out to the Denver, Colorado area with my then fiance, and worked for Denver Paramedics for about a year, which was just fantastic. What an eye-opening experience. I thought that I kind of had my stuff wired tight, having been a medic for 3 or 4 years at that point here in New York. And I had a rude awakening. It's a very progressive system in Denver. The standards are unbelievably high. And it was a tough adjustment. Life circumstances brought me back to New York with my wife, and bought a house, started settling down, continued working as a paramedic, kind of worked up through the ranks of a commercial ambulance service, got into management, got into quality improvement, and eventually got into education full time. I kind of went full circle and started running paramedic training programs at the community college level, which is really where all the medic programs in New York State right now are affiliated with colleges, mostly community colleges, 2-year schools. So I did that for a while. And while I was doing that, like so many good stories, I knew a guy. And, it was a former colleague, a former kind of mentor of mine, roped me into starting some work with New York State Homeland Security, which was at that time really starting to build up its curriculum, its repertoire. And that was in 2007, 2008. And the domestic Homeland Security community was still kind of trying to figure out what to do about the Mumbai attack that happened in 2006 in India. It was a little bit of a game changer. It was not weapons of mass destruction, which we had spent so many years trying to prep for. It was very simple. It was very orchestrated and it was very well executed. And we knew that we didn't have a great solution for 10 guys with small arms making an amphibious landing, which could happen anywhere. And so we started to develop curriculum in New York State to help kind of manage that. And we've had some pretty good success. We have a fantastic class that we run through our Homeland Security Training Center in New York called Advanced Active Shooter Tactics. And it brings multidisciplinary forces. So we have EMS, fire representatives, and law enforcement, street level folks, not super high speed tactical SWAT guys. And we teach them some tactics to manage multiple shooter scenarios. And there's corollaries that can bring that back, and it works for single shooter scenarios and other problems. But a lot of it comes down to communication. A lot of it comes down to being able to integrate with both other agencies within your discipline and agencies from other disciplines in the emergency response community. The reason that the way that connects to what I'm doing now is that the design team for Mobilized Rescue Systems is basically a bunch of guys that we've been teaching TECC and active shooter response with for Homeland Security. We were approached by a group of entrepreneurs out of the Rochester, New York area, based essentially on our experience in teaching and providing that kind of curriculum and care. And they had this idea that they were going to make a kit, a first aid kit, a box, a unit. The name is kind of we settled on kit, but it's been called a bunch of different things over the few years we've been designing it. And they wanted something to be available in that type of event for the bystanders, the lay rescuers present, to be able to do something. And we thought it was a good idea. We ran with that. I think that the mission for the Mobilized product line has expanded a little bit. Like, we're not solely focused on active shooter events anymore, because although they're horrific and they do require some timely care to get the best outcomes for the victims, there's still a small fraction of the emergencies that occur daily, weekly, monthly. And once we kind of realized what we could do using the technology and the available over-the-counter medical inventory, we said, well, if we're going to do it for bleeding control and we're going to do it for airway management, why can't we do it for seizures? Why can't we do it for allergic reactions? Why can't we do it for chest pain, which are things that happen every day all over the place? And that question we were able to answer and design a product that it's going to work no matter what the emergency is.
Right. It's funny, you see, all the little first aid kits, the university where I teach, we have like these pretty good size metal boxes that have first aid on them, and you open them up and there's some okay stuff in there, but for the most part it's like Band-Aids and stuff like that, and it's really useless if it comes into a major issue that happens. So, I can really understand the upgrade, I would say, in this kit that you guys have created. So back in the day when we first went to the public access AED, I know there was a lot of pushback by paramedics and whatnot about saying, no, people don't understand how to use them and they're going to be difficult. And they were able to really make those things simple. And when I teach, I talk about this little 8-year-old girl who in Chicago Airport saved her grandfather's life, basically because there was a public access AED there. She was there for her sister's Girl Scout training, and just kind of through osmosis learned how to use it. So I always say if an 8-year-old girl can use it, anybody can use it. And I think this kit that you guys have created is along the same line. If I could use it, anybody can use it.
Ironically, I have 3 boys. Right now they're 11, and I have 9-year-old twins. During the design process, though, my twins were 8, and they were my test subjects for a lot of the instructions that we came up with. Because we needed it to be that simple to use. A lot of our clients get some onboarding training. They want to know a little bit more about it if they're going to put it in their work environment. But we designed it from day one with the understanding that it could be a public access device. And so all of the language is plain English. There's no medical jargon in it. The questions are very simple, usually yes or no. And the way we design the algorithm, lately I've been describing it kind of like a choose your own adventure novel that I used to read when I was a kid. So on the first screen of the app, the possibilities are endless. It thinks that it's dealing with a huge emergency with lots of victims and everybody's trying to die, which it can do that. It'll help you triage and prioritize true life threats versus lesser emergencies. But as you offer more information and answer the questions in this real kind of simple yes and no format, usually about 5 or 6 questions in, it knows what you're dealing with. And it's narrowed down the scope of the emergency down to a point where it can start giving you some instructions. And usually, just like an EMT or a paramedic, we start by real basic stuff. We narrow it down. We get them a little comfortable so that we position them so that we can provide some interventions. And then it provides a set of interventions that are well within the range of safety for an untrained rescuer. We drew that line well on the side of safety, but you're still able to provide some fairly intricate care. I was doing a demo with one of the guys that I work with in the firehouse last night, and he went through an amputated limb scenario, and it walks you through the process of tourniqueting the limb and using one of the biohazard bags in the ice pack to put either the pieces that have come off, package them the same way that we would on an ambulance, essentially. It's funny, I had forgotten about that part of the algorithm. It's just not someplace that we go often in demonstrations. And I'm sitting there going, wow, that's pretty sophisticated.
Yes, I got a cough. So, do you envision this product being like an AED or a fire extinguisher on walls inside of buildings? Is this something is that the design of this kit, and is this kind of what you guys want to kind of push for?
It's funny. I'm not I don't fancy myself a salesman. I helped design the app and helped make some of the early decisions on the product. So I haven't gotten my head too wrapped around where it could go. Like, I was so focused on the mission of creating it so that it could accomplish the goal of medical care. Looking back at it now, I think it could go anywhere. I mean, if you have a demonstrated need for an AED in your location, then some risk manager has said, look, there's the possibility exists that somebody could experience a medical emergency here, and we want to be able to do something about that in the 10 or 15 minutes before the ambulance gets here. And I think the same principle, the same logic should apply to all medical emergencies. AEDs are fantastic if you're in VFib or VTAC. If you're not, they're not all that helpful. So, when you think about the host of other emergencies that are out there that people experience every day, our products are designed to walk that willing bystander through the process of managing that. For a short term, they're not designed to replace somebody with medical training. If there's an EMT that happens to be walking by, or a nurse that's in the airport, or a doctor, we don't trump their medical experience, training, and their judgment. But for that person that wants to do something and is terrified because this is it, like this is the only emergency they're probably going to have to manage, there's no reason they should feel helpless. Like, just open the box, turn it on, and go.
Right. I agree with you there. Like I said, when I see this idea here, the first thing I envisioned was, wow, this could be something where it is going to where all the AEDs and fire extinguishers are, because, obviously the fire extinguisher isn't replacing firefighters. The AED is not replacing paramedics as it is now. And obviously this kit would just be something to enhance that, and it could save lives. That's when I first saw it. It's like, wow, this is something I need to talk about, because I think this could really have a game changer, paradigm shift in how we do this. There's a Pulse Point, I think it's called Pulse Point, that new app that's out.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've played with it a little bit. And I know where I live, my fire department's really pushing that out countywide. They really want people to do this, and it's giving people the ability to go wherever to do CPR, and they see the value in that. And adding this to that, I mean, this could definitely save lives. I mean, there's been countless times when I was running as a paramedic where I've run on calls where, people were caught, very severely, and, the people that are around them are have a nasty towel, holding that direct pressure, and you go, wow, this is pretty gross. But you take the nasty towel off. That saved a life. But if you have something like this, where somebody doesn't know what they're doing and has the right equipment, and that could be like a game changer. And this could replace those chintzy first aid kits. And I always joke about.
Yeah, you open that white box hanging on the wall, and it's, first of all, it's rated, meaning there's nothing all that useful in it. There's a 2x2, there's some Band-Aids, there's some triple antibiotic ointment, which, that stuff has a place. Like sometimes you have a paper cut and you need a Band-Aid. And I don't think that was really part of our mission. We did put that stuff in our kit, mostly to make it's ANSI compliant. OSHA is a real it's a thing, and there are clients of ours that are very heavily regulated, and we didn't want them to have to buy our product and the little white box that hangs on the wall in the break room. So we added that stuff in there. We don't provide instructions on it. If you need a Band-Aid, get a Band-Aid. That's not something that we think somebody's going to need. Hopefully not going to need a whole lot of help managing. It could be a game changer. And I think that's part of the, as we start to break out right now, we're starting to gain some good traction. But it's hard sometimes for people to understand what it does. Like, we try and explain it to you, and it's just not like anything that's out there right now. Based on inventory or even the capabilities that it provides for an untrained rescuer. So, I usually say seeing it is believing it. Like, once you open the lid and you see it open up for, launch for the first time, it becomes very understandable.
All right, let's take a quick break here and listen to some sponsors. These guys are the reason why we're here, and please, if you can, just click on their websites or take a look at them and let them know that you heard them from us. Trying to reach people in the emergency management and response space, EM Weekly is a place for you to advertise. Each week, we are bringing in guests from around the world to talk about best practices and trends in emergency management and response. We also have the blog on EM Weekly's website and the EM Quarterly e-magazine. For more information, please email Brian at emweekly.com.
Emergencies happen, whether they're related to medical emergencies, threats of physical violence, weather-related, or other. One of the most difficult things during an emergency is to find help and quickly and efficiently communicate with all parties, regardless of whether you're an administrator, law enforcement, or the end user. With Titan HST, we help to store time by creating high-tech, yet simple-to-use mobile-based applications that connect you with the people who can help you. At Titan HST, we believe in the power of people.
315 and 314, there is at least one person that's been shot. Somebody is still shooting inside. 453, I have a party shot here. I need rescue hot.
Are you ready for the unthinkable? Call our friends at High Speed TACMed. They provide custom emergency planning and training that saves lives. With years of experience in law enforcement, search and rescue, responding to and managing large-scale incidents, HSTM will evaluate and prepare written plans, training sessions, drills, and debriefs, leaving you with the necessary tools and experience that can save lives. Call HSTM today to discuss your specific needs, and the staff of High Speed TACMed will help ensure that you're ready and are in complete compliance. Call High Speed TACMed today, 805-419-0024. Again, that's 805-419-0024. The friendly staff at HSTM is standing by.
Bringing out bodies now. Get someone to the back as soon as you can. Rescue personnel, I got at least 3 to 7 hits.
And welcome back from that quick break, and thank you again for listening to the sponsors, and we can't do what we're doing here without them. So let's get back into it.
And you see it open up for, launch for the first time, it suddenly it becomes very understandable.
Yeah, I think it's really kind of cool. Like I said, I could see this for sure going into institutions, schools for sure. Obviously like places like airports, things where we have a massive amount of people, going around where you need to have something like this. A few years ago, there was a mass shooting that I went to, and when I entered the room, there was he wasn't a lay person, he was a trained EMT, but he was across the street from a construction site. He came over to help out, right? Commendable. He's a former Marine, so they tend to want to go towards the action instead of running away from it. And I look at him, I go, "What do you have for your first aid kit?" And he showed me this little tiny white box that he had, and it had really nothing in it. And he was attempting to help people with just that little kit. And I could see in his face the frustration that he had, that he didn't have what he needed to treat. Yeah. And there's in the room there were 8 people that were shot in that room. And there was one person in the parking lot that was shot as well, but he was in the salon, the beauty salon. And like, you could see the look on his face that he was like, "I wish I had more." Yeah. And so when I brought in, I had the stuff with me. It was funny. At first, I was going to kick him out. I go, "What's your training?" He goes, "I'm an EMT." I'm like, "You're staying with me."
Yeah, you're mine.
And yeah, so sit by my hip, and we're going to start treating these people. And but yeah, I mean, if you had something like this, that could have made a difference in that guy's ability to treat those victims.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the right equipment in the right hands at the right time is what makes a difference. And it doesn't matter if he's a surgeon or just a bystander that gets the right just-in-time training with the right pieces of equipment. The ultimate outcomes are sometimes outside of our control, but something else that was definitely on our mind as we designed this was kind of the psychology of the rescuer too. So whether he's an EMT or just somebody else who's uninjured or minorly injured that wants to help, we want them to be able to walk away from that event knowing that there wasn't a whole lot else that I could have done. Like I opened the kit, we used, it told me what to do. I used a bunch of equipment. We put on a tourniquet. We used some quick clot. I sealed a chest. We rolled somebody into the recovery position. We did all these things. I used the emergency blankets to keep them warm because that's what it said. And, as I said, the ultimate outcome might be outside our control, but at least that rescuer is going to walk away from that saying, I did it. Like, I did something. Like, I did everything that I could have done. Because you know as well as I do, it's not the calls that go well that stick with us. It's the ones that you walk away from going, well, what if I wish I could have, if I had only known. And that was also part of our design process, was empowering them to do something both for the sake of the victim and for their own sake, walking away from that so they can, feel good is probably not the right word, but I think you understand where I'm going. We want them to feel like I did everything I could.
Yeah, I tell you, you're absolutely right about that as far as the psychological aspect of the rescuer, because you're right. The calls I remember are the ones that really did not go the way I wanted to go.
Absolutely.
And I sound like a broken record here, and for the listeners, I kind of apologize, but this is how excited I am about this. I see this kit as being a paradigm shift to something that you could put on the wall next to those fire extinguishers, and the layperson can grab it and work with it, because statistically, in any situation, 95% of all rescues are performed by the layperson. And that's the CPR at the, in the middle of the shopping center or whatever. And it's not, those of us that come in lights and sirens come a little bit later and we start doing our stuff. But 95% of all successful rescues are started by the lay person. And you think about that in the disaster context, right? That gets much bigger. So that's why we have programs. That's why we have like the CERT programs, and the other community volunteer programs that we have, because we need to have that force multiplier. And there's stories that you can talk about. I have a friend of mine who was a captain with the LA City Fire Department. After the Northridge earthquake, and he's driving down the road and he gets flagged down by this nurse, and she's like, hey, are you guys going to help me? And he goes, what's your training level? And she goes, I'm a nurse. He goes, great. Now you're in charge, but we got to go do this. We have to go do our drive-through. So for at least the first 24 hours in that case, it is the lay people that are going to be doing. Well, she's not lay, obviously, but there is the average citizen, not the fire department, that's going to come to the rescue. And this kit here can be a force multiplier in that.
And I remember having a conversation, as we're starting to get closer and closer to a functional model of this during the design process. We had a conversation about the value of it in a disaster, where imagine if you could just pull up with a trailer of them and open it up and say, here, go, grab one of these and go. And force multiplier is the actual phrase that we kept using. Even because originally one of the ideas that the business folks that we work with, they thought that the ambulance services might be a market for these, and an ambulance provider shouldn't need the instruction that's in the kit. They should have all the equipment that's in the kit. They should already have in their ambulance. But as we started talking about disaster response, it's like, well, what if an ambulance had a handful of this or a version of this that they could pitch to somebody in an emergency, or like your scenario where you're rolling into a multi-victim trauma situation and you have your gear, because that's your gear and you're going to use it, but you have, you could toss one to the EMT, or you could toss one to the salon owner and say, here, just open it up, follow the instructions, treat those people over there in that corner. And that, that has the potential to be a big deal, to change things. And, and I just read something this morning, actually. It was an article about lockdown as an emergency management measure in a school shooting. Mm-hmm. And, it's people, and I've been having this conversation for about a year with schools that we've been dealing with Mobilize products, in that, the assumption that lockdown is the ultimate solution to that problem is just a farce. It solves a portion of the problem, but, the question is, well, how do you know when lockdown isn't working? And I've asked teachers this, classroom teachers, well, how does your lockdown end? And oftentimes the answer is, it ends when the principal comes and unlocks the door, or when the police officer shows his badge and I unlock the door. And my next question is, well, what if smoke comes underneath the door while you're on lockdown, or the fire alarm goes off? And I had a teacher say, well, lockdown ends when the principal comes and unlocks the door. And, they've been conditioned to think that is the end of, that's it. That's where they stop responding to that emergency. And we just did some training out in Aurora, Colorado, at a private school, Regis Jesuit out there. And, clearly they're sensitive, especially being where they are and what the history is in that part of Colorado, to active shooter events. And they took one of our small kits, not the biggest one. They have those in the hallways where their AEDs are. But they took the smallest kit, which is really the size of an IFAC. It's a life threats only kit. And they put one in every classroom. And this was their idea. This wasn't our idea, because they're thinking 10 steps ahead, where if we go on lockdown, the police aren't coming to us right away. The fire department is definitely not going to get in here right away. They understand the mechanics of that response to the point where they need to be self-sufficient, and they need to be self-sufficient in the place where they intend people to take refuge, which is in their classrooms. So their classrooms are all equipped with some basic first aid equipment, and now they have an IFAC kit. And the IFAC kit comes with a little download. Every student and staff member in the school has the app on their phone. And so it doesn't matter where they are. They have access to life-saving medical equipment they're giving themselves the best chance to manage this situation for who knows how long it can take to get an EMT or a paramedic into that building.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was just very progressive thinking on their part. They're specifically thinking about a very specific disaster, emergency management situation. But It was cool, talking to the facilities guy and some of the other staff out there. Like, I mean, all of their teachers are have emergency management 100 and 200 from FEMA. Like any of their teachers can step outside and assume incident command, and
Wow, that's great.
and look for police, fire representatives and request unified command. Like, I don't know what I would do if I went up to a school and a teacher came out and said, "Where's your incident commander? We need to set up unified command." I don't know what I would do.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it was a cool conversation, I have to say. Like, it's progressive for sure.
So real quick. So, I have two more questions for you. One is going to be a hard one. This one's an easy one. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how would they get a hold of you?
The easiest way to get a hold of us is right through the website. It's www.mobilizerescue.com. All of the design team members have on our team page. You can access our email through that. There's a generic info button that you can hit and send us questions. If my email is super tricky, it's Seth@mobilizerescue.com. So, we make ourselves available. We're still a small company, a small footprint, but we're everywhere. We're trying to be everything for everybody while we're pushing this thing out there.
Oh, it's awesome. Okay, here's the hardest question of the day.
All right.
If you would recommend one book to somebody who wants to get involved in this business, emergency management, emergency response, what would it be?
One book. Whew. That is a really hard question. You should have prepped me for that. I'll be honest. I don't read a lot of. I don't read a ton of industry books. Usually, when I'm reading, I'm off on the side. One of the ones that I really liked was Leadership Lessons from West Point. And it's not so much of an emergency management thing. It's kind of a general view of kind of how to deal with things. And there was another one that I had read a long time ago. Most of the books that are out there paint a very, I think about the paramedics that have written books, and a lot of them they paint a very particular and oftentimes stereotypical view of what we do. I think that if people want to be good and have longevity in our industry, a lot of it comes down to perspective. So, being able to step back and see the big picture is important, and communication skills. Not just high-end hierarchical communications, but just being able to interact with people from the patient level all the way up to, to a boss, or, I think about my interactions with the fire chief in the fire department that I work for and things like that. Being able to understand what's appropriate, and being able to effectively communicate what needs to be communicated. It's important. Like, it makes a huge difference. And, as a paramedic instructor, I used to tell students all the time, an EMS call is like a gigantic 8-ball sitting on the edge of the biggest hill you've ever stood on. Right. And it wants to roll over you and crush you. And if you walk up to that 8-ball and you put your hand out right before it starts moving, you can hold it there, and you're never going to lose control of it. Like, you can hold it there with one hand. But as soon as you start to make some bad decisions, and a lot of those come down to communication or work ethic types of decisions, and I'll use myself as an example. The first time you roll up on a cardiac call and you realize you didn't check the batteries in your monitor and they're dead, the 8-ball starts rolling.
Right.
And we've all run that call. You've all been on that job at some point. You're never going to catch it. It's going to run you over, and you're going to get to the hospital, because you're eventually going to get to the hospital. But it's going to be a ragged mess. Like
Yeah.
it will be obvious that you have chased the 8 ball down the hill the entire call. And not all the time, but oftentimes those kind of hot messes can be avoided by good communication with you and your partner, good communication with outside agencies that are arriving on scene, and good communication with your patient. The rest of it kind of falls into place, I think, when you're able to collect the right information and pass it on to the right people. A little bit of mastery of your skills, but I think a lot of that is easy when you're relaxed and you have general control over the rest of what's going on. So I don't think I really answered your question about books, the book in specifically, but I think a lot of the things that impacted me the most, as I was, kind of learning how to do this, were books that expanded my ability to connect with more and more people. So, everything from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance to, like kind of whatever you can read to have that little ounce of connection. That's important. So I guess it's kind of it's a broad base that you're looking for, not something specific.
That's an awesome answer to that question. That's kind of what we're trying to get out of this. When I ask that question is, what can you do to better yourself? And I think that answered that question well. All right, Seth, well, I'm going to let you go. And thank you so much for being here, and looking forward to hearing more from you.
Excellent. I look forward to hopefully being on again. Thank you so much.